And it is 4:45, so to honor everyone's time, we will go ahead and get started.
Okay.
I'm just going to repeat a couple housekeeping reminders again so we can give anyone who's joining late a little bit of grace time. But thank you for joining us for the meal prep workshop, Healthy Grilling. We're making freezer to grill kebabs today. And if you could please all mute your mics, that would help kind of bring back the, cut down on the sounds from the outside, especially if you have little kids at home in the background like I do. Hopefully it's not too loud or distracting. And go ahead and just take a second to wash your hands if you haven't already. Wash your produce, prep your area, get out all your ingredients, etc. if you're going to prep along with us. And let's see, what was the other thing I had to say? Oh, if you have any questions during this time, please feel free to either write it in the chat box or you can come off mute and ask as well, but we will have time at the end to go over some questions as well. So I'm going to give you 2 seconds to wash your hands if you haven't already, and then we will go ahead and get started.
No, yeah, you are, but how come I can't send an email? Here. She's got her wrong, she's got SCHUL there, and it shouldn't be that. Maybe I can just do this. Yeah. Whoever's talking now to your husband, everybody can hear you.
Thanks. Okay, I also just had to step away to remind my children to be quiet. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully that little 2-second delay gave everyone time to get settled. So we're going to start by talking about what you need. I have a little picture here, but the joy of kebabs is that you can really use whatever you want. So whatever you happen to have on hand, that goes for the produce, the protein, and then also your herbs and spices and oil. And I'll show you a couple different things that I have that I'm doing, altering from the recipe as we go along. And, oh, okay. Just want to make sure my recording was going, and it looks like it is. Okay, so a couple tips while you prepare. Again, if you haven't already done some of those prep things of washing your hands, etc., this is a good time to do it. Another thing too, there's a couple different skewer options when we make kebabs, right? And for these, the benefit to putting them on the skewer ahead of time, if you are going to freeze them today, is that then that's already done for you when it's time to go and cook it, which can make it easier, can make it a little bit more fun, a little prettier presentation. So if you are using a wooden skewer, I do recommend at this point getting them in a water bath. And so behind me, you might not be able to see very well, but I just have one of those large baking dishes filled with just a little bit of water, and I have these soaking in them. That'll help so that the sticks don't burn, even if you're putting them in the freezer. That pre-soak is still important, and this is still a good time to do it. So go ahead and do that. Otherwise, if you have like a metal or other kind of reusable skewer, then you probably don't have to pre-soak that. So you're good there. So with grilling, while you're continuing to get ready, there are a couple concerns, of course. When we cook food at high heat, it does create, there's a risk for some harmful compounds to be created in the meat especially. And so I'm not going to say the names because I will probably do a terrible job at pronouncing them and you won't remember them. But you may recognize the abbreviations AGE, HCA, and PAH. So all of those, like I said, form in animal proteins when cooked at high temperature, especially if cooking time is longer. You might associate this with the term of like being charbroiled, and having the carcinogens, right? So when we consume lots of that, those compounds, we have an increased risk for inflammation, development or progression of chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. But the good news is there are things we can do to limit that. And so we are going to talk about that today, so that you can still enjoy tasty and healthy grilled foods, because grilling is one of those ways that we can prepare meat and have it be leaner because the fat is decreased. So we'll talk about a couple of different of those things along the way as we go. One thing that stands true always is having more vegetables than meat. So if you should notice today that was a big part of the recipe. There's more vegetables, and hopefully that will be true in what you're making as well. Another thing is that choosing a protein like fish or chicken has less meat, right? It's leaner. And then cutting your meat into smaller portions. So we'll talk about all that as we go through. Oops, hitting the wrong button here. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is prepare our marinade. So the American Institute for Cancer Research recommends that you should marinate meat, especially red meat, for at least 30 minutes. Sitting in that acidic marinade helps to reduce the amount of those potential harmful compounds that can form while cooking. So that is the big benefit to the marinade. And you'll notice in our marinade we have the lime to bring the acidity, and then we also have a couple herbs and spices. So let's talk about those. And you can go ahead and start measuring out your spices while I'm talking about this. And get your marinade ready to go. And I've got it up on the screen there. So you can get your 2 tablespoons of oil in that bowl, the paprika, cumin, chili powder, etc., whatever your favorites are. Question? Nope. Okay, thought someone had said a question. So yeah, the recipe is right up on your screen. Otherwise, I did email it to you as well, so you can look that up. But you're going to need 2 tablespoons of oil, whatever oil you prefer. I like to use grapeseed oil in things like this where it's a high heat because it has a higher transition point. You need 1 teaspoon of paprika, a 1/2 teaspoon of cumin, 1/4 teaspoon chili powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon rosemary, oregano, sage, or thyme. And so I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about why rosemary, oregano, sage, or thyme. So not only do herbs and spices add flavor and we can reduce the amount of salt we use, but research has found that rosemary specifically, and they've also found other things like oregano, sage, thyme, seems to be the more woody stem herbs. They can reduce some of those compounds that are produced when cooking with red beef specifically. So that is definitely a helpful thing to have in your marinade. And then, like I said, also the lime juice brings that acidity. And I will just say that I personally like to add garlic. That's not something that is in this recipe, but in my family, we like the flavor. In my household, I should say, we like the flavor of garlic, so I add that to everything. And garlic also has been proven to block the growth of cancer cells, so that's a good, further reason to use that for the health benefits. And I will say that with garlic, just a tip, something that a lot of people don't know, I just learned it not too long ago myself, but if you're using fresh garlic, you should really, it's called press and then rest. So you should chop it, mince it, press it, whatever, first, and then let it sit for 10 minutes before touching heat. So in this, so that there's like 2 different compounds they need to mesh to give you the full medicinal benefits of garlic. So in this case, when we're making a marinade, that's perfect. We don't even have to worry about that, but just something to think about when you're using garlic for other dishes where you might be putting it in on the heat sooner. If you're buying your garlic already minced, then you don't really have to worry about that. Couple other things I want to mention while you continue to measure out and whisk together your meat marinade. So you can see I've got it in a bowl right here, whisking, and I will add my chicken and stir that in while I'm talking. So the other thing I wanted to share with herbs and spices, if you are using fresh herbs today, and you have too much, well, obviously you can, share it, bring it over, do a doorstop drop off with neighbors or coworkers or friends, whatever that might be. And the stems that are more soft, if you're using those, you can store them in a glass with a little bit of water, put a plastic bag over them, and put them in your fridge and just change the water every day. That'll keep them for quite a while. If they're more woody, you're going to treat them kind of like a green. So wash them, rinse them, wrap them in like a slightly damp paper towel, put them in a Ziploc bag, mostly closed, a little bit open, and keep them in your crisper drawer. That'll keep them fresh longer as well. One other tip I have with that would be, if you haven't started cutting your chicken yet, you can also do that. Cut it into 1-inch piece, and then you're going to toss it right into that marinade bowl, and then you'll put that in the fridge. So other tips for using the rest of your herbs, especially if you are using fresh herbs, right? Because then those don't keep as long as the kind that we have just in a jar in our pantry, but you can dry them, obviously. You can freeze them. You can add the woody stem ones, actually, like the rosemary and the thyme. You could peel off the herbs and you can use the stem as a skewer on your grill. And you can also infuse them in vinegars, etc. to make an infused vinegar. You could put them in a bag to save them for if you're making soup stock. Obviously, you can compost them. And you can also use them to infuse in like a dip or whatever. I think that's all I had to say about the herbs. And then just to talk about the lime, kind of the same thing with the peel. You can, not only do you get the juice out, but then instead of just tossing it, you could throw it down your garbage disposal. I think a lot of people know about that. It gives it a fresh scent. You can also infuse it in vinegar for 2 weeks and then add water. You take the skins out, add water, and then use that as kind of an all-purpose cleaner at home. Same for any citrus, of course. And you can also zest the citrus right away, so in our case lime, and then freeze it and add it to a container or a freezer bag so that you have it for future time when you need some like lime zest or whatever, or use it to make homemade lime salt, or just save it for when you're doing infused water, etc. Okay, and with chicken, just another tip, I think I said already a couple times, but make sure you are cutting it to 1-inch piece. That'll help cut down the cooking time. When you are grilling, if you do have some meat that is larger and takes longer to cook, in kebabs, that wouldn't be the case, but to reduce that grilling time, you can either put it on the grill first to get those grill marks and then finish it in the oven, or vice versa, of course. Put it in the oven first, finish it on the grill to get the grill marks. That way you're reducing the risk of those harmful compounds forming, but you're still getting that grill flavor that we all enjoy. So I'm just going to go quick and put this chicken in my fridge so that it stays fresh. And I will be right back, and we will move on to cutting up our produce. Okay. All right, so cutting our produce now. So I have my onion here. I'm going to start with the onion. And if you... You can just leave the whole peel on and wash it. It is actually good to buy onions with the peel because it helps keep everything free from bacteria and molds, etc. while it's waiting to be used. So I just wash it with the peel on. If something like this comes off, I'll wash that. If I'm going to either put it in, if I'm going to save it to put, you can and should save it if you're going to make vegetable stock. The skin actually has a lot of bionutrients in it, and adds a lot of flavor if you add it to vegetable stock, or even if you can put it in like a tea bag or cheesecloth, and you can let it sit inside of pot roast or other soup, whatever you're doing, and then take that out and discard it before you serve your meal, just like you would kind of like a bay leaf, right, to add the flavor, but you're not going to eat the bay leaf. So I've got both my bag here for vegetable stock, and then also my little compost bin. Or if you were going to throw something right into the garbage, I find it's helpful to either bring the garbage over to the prep area or have a bowl that's just for trash. So just wanted to share with you a quick some tips for cutting onions to make it easier for putting them on the kebabs. And I do have a video, a link that I can send along with this as well. But basically, after you wash it, you're going to cut off both ends. So you see I'm going to cut off this end right here, which is going to help the peeling come off. I'm going to throw that in my soup stock bag. And then I'm going to cut off the other end as well. And then now that I've got the both ends off, it's going to be a lot easier to take that peeling right off. If you're only going to use half, then I would leave that half on so it's still protected. Cut it in half. So this half I will just save for later. And then, okay, so now you can see you've got this half of onion. I'm going to hold it so it's straight up like this. The bottom side is flat, so that'll help it from slipping. Hopefully you can see. Okay. I think you should be able to see the onion. So you're holding it like that, and you're going to make a cut kind of right there. So at an angle. Shooting for the widest part of that when you look down should be about an inch, maybe a tad bigger. So I'm just going to cut that part down, and then you can just leave this together. And for this purpose, I would say, like anything that's a real tiny little sliver, I'm going to take those out because that's going to be hard for the skewer to go through. I also know, I'm going to make a salad tonight, so I'll just chop this up or throw it in the salad. You can freeze it, whatever it might be. So now you can just throw this in your, a bowl that we will drizzle with oil when we go to do the skewers next. So go ahead and keep going through your onion, chop up those segments, and then throw them in your bowl. You can leave it attached. That'll make it easier for getting everything on the skewer stick. And when you're ready, you can move on to whatever produce you have next. You can see here I have the zucchini. I just chopped it about that big, so maybe about a 1/4 inch thick. Zucchini has a lot of water in it, so it tends to cook up faster than some other vegetables. So I didn't want to leave them too thin and get too flimsy. But if you prefer a crisper zucchini, I'd recommend having it a little bit thicker. If you like the zucchini to be softer, then you could do a little bit thinner. It's really up to your personal preference here. So as you're done chopping your vegetables, just toss them into a large bowl. I also have mushrooms tonight. Again, not something that was on the recipe, but I like mushrooms and I had them around, so I'm going to toss those in my bowl. And then I'm going to show you a little tip with the peppers as well for cutting this. So you're going to go ahead and get the core, the stem out, and pull that top seeds out. And I had just thrown mine, again, in a bag that I'll use to make stock at some point. You can toss it, whatever you want. And then same with this, the membrane and the seeds. Throw that in a bag, or you can toss it. Some people just like to eat it, whatever you want to do. And then you're going to cut it in kind of strips about an inch or so thick. You can see like that, and then you just cut it in half again. So we can see, not like that. Throwing those in the bag. So I get a piece of hair going in my mouth here. And then we've got our bowl. full of vegetables. I'll give you a little bit of time to catch up and talk about some of these vegetables, but you can see I've got my bowl full of vegetables, and I already had put in my salt and pepper and oil, and I might even just do an extra little drizzle of oil on top. So you're just gonna kind of toss them all to coat. And I also to this added garlic again because we like garlic at my house. So while you're chopping up vegetables, let me just tell you a little bit else, a couple more things about onions, zucchinis, and peppers, since that's what was in the recipe. Give you guys time to kind of catch up with that a little bit. So I already said that onions, actually, no, I didn't say. So onions are also very healthy for you. You can probably see it on the screen. They are like medicine for your body. There have been studies that have found, a test tube study in particular in 2009, which I understand is a little bit old at this point, but onions had killed type A influenza virus better than Tamiflu. So that being said, onions are medicine, very natural form. So try to use them whenever you can. And actually, they've also found that when you cook onions, it increases their antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-cancer properties. So all the more benefit to using them. If you have a hard time with the flavor of onions, cooked onions tend to be easier for a lot of people. I would just say, cut them up really small. Obviously that doesn't work on kebabs, but cutting them up smaller can help make it more tolerable. And another thing I wanted to talk about is what we call the onion tears. So actually an onion that gives you tears, that watering, those are really healthy onions that just jam-packed full with nutrients and vitamins. So while it can be an irritant, it's a good sign that your onion is, bursting with vitamins and nutrients. It's going to be really healthy for you. So that's a good sign. Not to say that if you don't get tears, it means your onion is not healthy, but it just might be a little bit past its prime, or it can just be a more mild version. Both are fine. It's still going to have a lot of vitamins and nutrients available for you. So thinking about those tears though that we get from onions, a couple tips for avoiding that. Well, first of all, there are such a thing as onion goggles. So that's something that you could use if you had wanted to. I'm sure you can get them on Amazon. Some other tips is you can chop it under running water. I'm not really sure how that would work. But I know there's some cutting boards where you can attach to your sink and put it over there. So maybe just having the water running right near you might help. I haven't tried that to test it out. But one thing that I have tried and that has been shown to be helpful is if you dab a little bit of vinegar on your cutting board before getting started or on the onion. So there have been times where it's a really strong onion and I will go ahead and just get a little vinegar and just dab, pick up that onion, dab a little bit on there and then continue cutting, and it does help for sure. I already told you about the skins, so make sure you're saving those if you haven't been already. Storing onions, they have a lot of moisture and they'll keep for a long time. So you can keep them in the fridge on the shelf for a few weeks. But it's even better if you put them in paper towel or paper bag, or just somewhere in a dark, cool place. Will be better. Don't put them next to potatoes because it'll cause the potatoes to ripen faster. And I also read recently that actually the best way to store your onions, this is a nice little funny tip for you. The best way to store your onions would be in pantyhose. So you put the onion in, tie it off, and then each time you add one, just add a tie. And then as you take it out, you just cut the tie right below the tie to drop it out and store that in a cool, dark place. So like a pantry or a closet, just try to take them down before you have people over who might be going in those places because they'll think you're pretty weird. I do not store my onions like that, but if I had the space to do it, maybe I would. That might be kind of funny. So moving on to talk about zucchini, kind of an interesting fact, the stems on a zucchini are actually edible too. Let me see if I can grab one out here. So this little this little butt end right here, that's edible. I have not tried them, but I saw a recipe for cutting that off, slice them thin if they're not already, and put them on top of a pizza. Might be worth trying. You can also just toss them in your bag for a soup stock if you are into doing that. And also, if you have those large overgrown zucchinis that we sometimes end up with in the summer, you can take the seeds out. Sometimes when they get really big, those seeds are not too palatable. So you can take the seeds out and you can roast them just like pumpkin seeds for a tasty snack. And if you are growing zucchini yourself, you can you can eat parts of the flower that pop off of the zucchini plant in salads, soup, saute them, etc. Which parts, I'm not 100% sure, probably all of them, but you might want to research that a little bit more before you do that. I also have not tried that myself. And then peppers, you can toss the whole pepper, the stem, the membrane, the seeds. You can toss that into a bag to put in your soup stock as well if that's something you're interested in making. You can obviously compost it. And then you can also do some things with the seeds of the peppers as well. I don't think that they will grow a plant, but you can dry them out and use them like in the place of the roasted pepper seeds, the hot ones. And I see someone says, who wears pantyhose anymore? Exactly. So if you still have some laying around and you're trying to figure out what to do with them, now you know. You can put them to good use still. All right, so hopefully by now everyone has gotten their produce chopped up and tossed it in a bowl with some oil and your favorite seasoning, at least a little salt and pepper. And we will go ahead and move on to building the skewers. So I am just going to grab my little tray here. And like I said, hopefully you got your skewers into a water bath. Forgot what the words were for a second. But you're basically just building the skewers at this point. And I would say just for not cleanliness, I can't think of the right word, but I would do the vegetables first and then do the chicken second. It'll give the chicken more time to marinate, and you want to keep them separately. Another tip is to do all the same vegetable on one skewer. So like this one's got a mushroom, so I'll put all mushrooms on. And that way, if you have vegetables that have different cooking times, you can take them off as they're done, as opposed to being like, half of this is ready and half of it's not, and I might get burnt. And then just one quick tip for building your skewers so that you don't poke yourself. I find it's helpful to back up a little bit here, and hopefully you can see the thing. So put the mushroom, zucchini, onion, whatever it is, put it right down there and hold it in place, and then poke the skewer into it. Flip it up, and then you can push it down on the outside. So that way you're not trying to finagle and poke yourself. Especially an important thing if you're using one of those metal ones. I have poked myself. I've learned this the hard way by poking myself. You also want to make sure that you leave a little bit of space in between your produce and your meat, etc., so that it can cook a little bit better. For onions, again, if you did leave that chunk all together, so you're just putting it down, push the skewer in, then you can reach up on the ends, so you got it poking through, and push it in, and then you can just spread them apart. Yeah, like that. Good. So in the end, then you're just going to be laying them on the tray. I like to put parchment paper or wax paper down on my baking sheet so that when I freeze them, they aren't stuck then to the tray. So let me just go ahead and quick grab my frozen ones for you so you can see. Keep skewering. So you can see here I've gotten the frozen ones are all on, and I can easily pick them up off the tray. I've got all zucchini on one, onion on one, pepper on one, etc. Put those over there. And then the next step you'll want to do is the chicken. And I like to double bag things when I freeze them. It helps to prevent from freezer burn, and then it also helps to prevent like any leakage if there's a sauce, etc. So you can see I've got my chicken ones here. They're all ready to go. And you can mix, you can mix, put the chicken and the vegetables all in one bag if you want. I just kept them separate in case we do have some family who are vegetarian. So if they're coming, then I'm going to be respectful and not have the meat be touching. Some people don't really care if they are vegetarian, but that can be helpful. Then you can really pull out what you need. Another thing I would say is that if you're storing them in a regular gallon size Ziploc bag, either you want to cut off the ends so that it can fit upright, or you're gonna put them at an angle and you might need a couple more, which can be helpful then for separating the chicken from the vegetables. I can take these out and show you my chicken ones there. Okay, so go ahead and keep doing that. I'm gonna throw these back in the freezer so they don't unthaw on me while you're finishing up. All right, and then it comes to, like I said, freezing and storing. So what is easiest is if you throw them in the freezer, at least 3 hours until they're solid. It's easier to handle then. But otherwise, just overnight is easy too. And then if you are not going to be making them soon, transfer them to a freezer bag. And like I said, doubling up on bags can be helpful to prevent freezer burn, especially if you don't quite know when you're going to do it. Or maybe you do and you know it's not for another month, but the produce that you wanted to use or the meat was on sale, so you're going to go ahead and get on it. This can be especially an easy thing to do if you're having a large gathering of people, whenever that might be allowed again. And if you're not going to, if you don't need to freeze them, if you want to put them on the grill right away, by all means, you can certainly do that. Which brings me to the next slide. So for grilling, like I said, having it that small amount, you're going to have it at a high heat, but it'll only need to be on there for a little bit, a couple minutes, and you just keep rotating them. And it should be about 12 to 15 minutes total. If it's not a great grilling day, like today, you can go ahead and pop them in the oven. And actually, I did that. So I can show you. We've got a couple on here, if you can see, a couple mushrooms, peppers, and onions that I will serve tonight to my family. I'll have to heat them up a little bit. But so you can bake them in the oven as well. Some fun ideas for leftovers. If you made more than you can eat, serving it over quinoa or rice, which you could do the day of as well. Adding it to eggs, chopping it up and making a bunch of those little egg muffin bites for the breakfast. That's a good idea. Make it into a panini or make some grilled tacos with the leftovers. So lots of fun ways that you could use up leftovers or use them that day even. So I'm going to invite you to take yourselves off mute or type in the chat box if anyone's willing to share I guess first if you have any questions, but then also if anyone would like to share their favorite prep ahead summer recipe. Doesn't have to be grill. Someone had typed in grilled salmon and asparagus. Awesome. And Brianna, if you have a special recipe you like to follow, please send that our way and we can send it out with the recording. Anyone else have a favorite meal that they, especially like something that's easy to prep ahead of time, so it's easier on the day of when you're cooking it? No, none others coming in. If you if you think of something that you do like to use as a quick prep ahead meal on a Sunday or whatever, and then throw in the freezer for making later in the week, please feel free to email us so we can share with everyone else. Someone did say that they bought some cute little potatoes, microwaved them a bit, and then put them on skewers. Doing it in the oven tonight. Yeah, that's great. Greek chicken thighs sounds like a good recipe, Renee. Please feel free to send us the recipe if you have a specific recipe so we can share it. And same, Maria, I love that idea. That's a good idea to like prep, do a little steaming in the microwave, reduces the grill time as well. Fantastic. So just a couple reminders as we kind of wrap things up here. We do have some other opportunities for you to stay engaged, especially during this time. We have a 30-day Eat Your Veggies challenge coming up in June, so this workshop can get you ready for that. You can, if you're throwing your kabobs in the freezer, that can be part of your plan of eating more vegetables. We also are doing a virtual Thrive Cafe on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. And Feel Good Fridays is every Friday at 10 a.m. And you can feel free to email Tasha or myself if you have questions on how to register or want to get the link for those. And we are still offering coaching. We can meet telephonically, we can meet at the clinic, or we can meet you somewhere for a walk if that's preferable. And that is all I have for today. So please feel free to email us with any questions or call us. And like I said, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to come off mute or type it in the chat box. I'll stay on for just a second more. I'm sorry, a couple minutes, not a second.
Thanks, Courtney. This was great.
Thank you.